Auzubillahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is Ghazala Amin for PRM700 within your MSPM program. By this time, we have covered several knowledge areas in project integration management and then the project scope management. This particular presentation and the next presentation would be talking about one of the very important knowledge areas, which is the project human resource management. If anything can make or break a project, it would be the human resources associated with it. Motivation, conflict resolution, the characteristics of a good project manager, the qualities of a project manager, all will be discussed under this umbrella. Lot have been discussed and talked about the scope management and the integration management in the past lectures. Now we are going to start focusing on the human aspect of project management. Project human resource management is again one of the 9 knowledge areas of what has been prescribed by PMI. In the PMI 5th edition, they have added another one which I've already discussed, is a project stakeholder management. And within the boundaries of the project stakeholder management, the human resource management will actually cover some of the details. So let's go on and look at why is it so important. Some of the reference study material would be your chapter 9 from the PMBOK, the Project Management Body of Knowledge. Obviously, the study notes that are being provided to you as part of the syllabus and the lectures, the presentation slides that I'm covering are the most important resource material for you to successfully pass this class and to get more information. I do highly encourage you to go out on the websites, look at reference material. There are plenty books available in the market. Dr. Harold Kerzner's book is something that I have recommended. And if you want to pursue PMP certification after getting your degree in MSPM, and I again strongly encourage you to do so because industry certification has its own significant value. You can use any other material, but Dr. Harold Kerzner's book is a valuable resource again, and it supports a lot of concepts that are provided to you by the PMI Institute. We talked about the processes for the scope management. Now let's talk about the project human resource management. Project human resource management includes the processes needed to organize and manage the project team. Human resources obviously are considered an organization's most important asset, and the same applies to projects. Processes covered under project human resource management are human resource planning, project team acquisition, the project team development, and the project team management. If I talk about the project human resource management, it includes the processes and the definition of the project human resource management. Remember, let me start off by clarifying that almost every organization that you have dealt with always has an HR department, the human resource department. There's a clear distinction between the HR management organization or the department within an organization and the project human resource management. Project human resource management strictly deals with the human resources involved with the project. So within the boundaries of the project, the needs of the project human resources are dealt with under this knowledge area. So if you typically use a human resource department in situations of marriage, divorces, death, sick leaves, the annual leaves, the pay, the project human resource management does not deal with those situations. Project human resource management deals with bringing in people, assessing the skills required by the human resources for a project, motivating them to continue to deliver to the best of their capabilities. Performance review comes underneath it. Everything else has still has to be dealt with, and it's an important aspect of having human resources on your project, but all that is typically in a functional or a balanced matrix environment is dealt with from the human resource management department. So with that mindset, let's look at the definition of the project human resource management. Project human resource management includes the processes required to make the most effective use of the people involved with the project. It includes most of the project stakeholders. Okay, again touching on the stakeholder aspect, the sponsors, the customers, the partners, individual contributors, project management team, etc., etc., etc. So all human resources that you as a project manager are dealing with within the boundaries of the project fall under the project human resource management. Within the knowledge area of human resource management, there are 4 processes according to PMBOK. And those start off with the planning phase. Well, there are human resources, including the project manager or the business analyst or the information analyst, that have been acquired in the initiation phase. But most of the planning, those are minimal resources. Again, remember the bell curve. In the initiation and the beginning of the planning phase, you have minimal human resources. Under the planning phase, this would be the first time that the project manager, the sponsors, and other people will start thinking of resources or the human resources that are needed particularly for the project or for the specific project. So under the planning phase, the first thing that we start off is with development of a human resource plan. The skills, and we'll talk more about it obviously, the skills needed, what kind of expertise that is needed, what kind of personality is needed, etc., etc. And let's put an underline on the personality and we'll talk about it. Why personality of a human resource within your project is extremely important, because it depends on the organization that you're dealing with. Imagine a person who's continuously worked in an advertising agency having to come and work in a defense establishment where there are very firm, rigorous and rigid rules and regulations that need to be followed, certain way of dressing that needs to be required, a certain attitude that is required while addressing their superiors. A person from a very casual environment will find it extremely difficult to not only to deal with others or to even continue to work as a productive personnel in such a rigid environment. So it's very important to understand what we are expecting from our project human resources and what is actually needed to make them fully capable and fully motivated individuals. So we do all of the planning under the planning phase, and that comes out as development of a human resource plan. The human resource plan will again be one of the several components that will make up your project plan. Moving on, the execution phase. Under the execution phase, there are 3 processes. Based on the human resource plan that was developed in the planning phase, you will start acquiring those team members. Once you've acquired your team members, and now you have a project team that you're supposed to deal with as a project manager, you start working on development of this particular team. You as a project manager is responsible for enabling them to work as a team and work as a group. Once the team is established, and you start calling them a team because it's a cohesive group of people who are working towards the goal of, the desired goal of achieving the schedule, the cost, and the product or the service and or meeting or exceeding the needs of the customer, and so on and so forth. So now a team is developed. Once a team is developed, the next step would be to manage this particular team. And managing a team is a pretty hard task within itself. But the 4 processes start off with the planning phase and actually are contained within the execution phase. Human resource planning. So the first process in the planning phase. Human resource planning involves identifying, documenting, and assigning project roles, responsibilities, and also the reporting relationship. The background of what I just talked about is the organization needs should also be understood at this point in time. Understanding what kind of skill sets are needed for my project, how many, what for, what are the goals, how long, all those things come under the human resource planning aspect of it. Under the human resource planning, there are project roles and project responsibilities. So let's talk about the project roles. Who does what? And then the project responsibilities will be who decides what. Extremely important area of who will be doing certain task and then who decides what. So the responsibility and the accountability aspect is brought into the picture now. And again, within the human resource planning, you also need to understand that all your tasks within the WBS that were created, the tasks and the activities to take your project from A to Z or from initiation to closure must be assigned to appropriate stakeholders. Within the human resource plan, you will come across a term called responsibility assignment matrix. Under the project planning tools, we touched upon that, and you actually saw a template of what a RAM looks like. My common question is, for people in the IT, the first time I asked the question of what is RAM, and the first answer or the group of answers, everybody raises their hand and say it's random access memory. Well, within the project management context, RAM is responsibility assignment matrix, and that's the difference of lingo. When several professional project managers are talking within themselves, the RAM would automatically mean responsibility assignment matrix. The term SME is not a small medium enterprise but is a subject matter expert. And once you groom yourself and educate yourself within the project management field, you will start talking the same language. So let's talk about the responsibility assignment matrix, a structure which establishes relationship of the project organizational structure to the work breakdown structure. So you have a group or a list of activities to take the project from initiation to closure, breakdown of activities. And then you'll start thinking, who will do each one of those activities? The word who is a human resource. And that is done to help ensure that each element of the project scope of work is assigned to a responsible individual. At certain level of WBSs, we're going to look at accountability. We're going to assign a person who is not responsible for the task, but is accountable for making sure that the task is done. But further drill down into those activities or further breakdown of those activities, you'll start assigning responsible individuals who are not just managing or leading that task, but are actually responsible for completing that task. So the accountability aspect can then kick in and people can start responding to, yes, the task has been done successfully. The next process, will be acquiring of project team. So you've decided who does what kind of a thing. You have decided what is needed to do those tasks, and now you go out and start acquiring those project team members. Let's start off with the definitions, and then we'll go into a little bit of detail within the acquiring project team. Involves getting the human resource needed, either it could be individual or groups, assigned to and working on the project. So this is the time when you, as project manager, have assessed what kind of expertise is needed, who is needed, and then you go out and start bringing in individuals. You start looking at resumes or CVs and start bringing in people. The whole decision of acquiring of project team members varies from the project organization. So functional organization, it is usually beg, borrow, steal from different line managers or different functional managers to make sure that you as project manager have the best available resource to do your work. Moving on, same situation will probably exist in a weak matrix. Partially will continue to exist in a balanced matrix. Strong matrix organization or projectized organization, you probably have to send out requests or put in advertisements in newspapers, get several resumes, and start looking through the CVs to bring in or add in more resources who are only brought in to do specific tasks within your project. So that's the distinction between which organization are you working for, and why is the understanding of which organization and how does my organization operate comes in handy and has a significant importance also. Another thing that we need to think about as project managers when we're acquiring project team members is if the best resources are not available. Obviously your demand and your need will be to bring in a resource who's so good at what he or she does is they can come in, they'll spend few hours or a day to understand what needs to be accomplished and actually goes down and start working on and giving you the output or the result that you had always expected from that individual. And now comes the complexity of dealing with human resources. That is not always the case. So if the best resources are not available, the storybook definition of the best resource, the project management team must take care to ensure that the resources that are available will meet the project requirements. Think about one thing. Even though we all as project managers need to acquire the best skilled resources in the market, there are constraints that does not allow you to do so. Money constraint being one. More skilled resources, more money you will be spending on that particular resource, lesser your profit margin. Another important thing to think about at this point in time is when you bring in the best and when you bring in resources who are soul flyers, who are really good at what they do, you're also bringing in individuals who has a certain attitude about things. They have their own agendas and they want to progress at a much faster pace. So thinking of that pace, can you allow all your individuals to become extremely competitive with each other? Sometimes it's a good idea to bring in the A players, few A players, and then mentoring the other general staff to come up to that level, maybe fairly faster or quicker. But it's that combination that is needed. The combination of having some leaders, some younger college graduates, some people who are eager to learn and get motivated, and they will create this little team which is very cohesive and actually are there to meet the targets that you have set for your own little project. Once the acquisition of your project team is complete, you're going to move into the next process, which is development of your team. Remember some comments that I made in the previous slide? Is mentoring, the word coaching, bringing in some leaders and then bringing in some followers who are actually eager to listen and understand and follow those leaders, those ace players. This is where the whole cohesiveness idea comes in. Under the develop project team, the definition would be includes both enhancing the ability of stakeholders to contribute as individuals, as well as enhancing the ability of the team to function as a team. One thing that we as project managers need to decide is that we do not want a lot of conflicts in our projects. When we don't want conflicts, we actually need a harmonious situation within the projects. And to create and catch on to that harmonious relationship, you want all your team members to be working very well together. That needs a lot of work, not just from you as a project manager, but also from all of the project team members that are making your project team. We will talk about the Tuckman model and how some of this team progression happens. When we talk about the team development, this is such a big issue that multiple consultants, a lot of studies have taken place to ensure that this whole stage of team development is effective and end up creating this cohesive team, which is a high-performing team. I would love to spend a lot of time on high-performing team, but very, very few teams actually get to the level of getting called or being labeled as a high-performing team. Under the Tuckman model of team development, there are 5 stages of development. Stage 1 is the forming stage. Stage 2 is the storming phase. Stage 3 is the norming phase, when people start settling down. Stage 4 will be the performing team or the performing stage. And last but not the least is the adjourning phase. A brief summary before we go down and start talking deeply into each one of those phases. Think of a situation where a new team has been acquired. They may or may not have worked together. The individuals of the project team may or may not have worked together as individuals before this particular project. You're bringing in new individuals with new mindsets, with their own little goals and objectives, with their own mission and their own vision of what they want to achieve by working on this project. Where do they want to be in the next 5 years? How do they want to achieve this? And is this just considered a little step, or within this project they're wanting to develop as this experienced professional? Each one of these individuals have their own mindset. You've brought them together. And now think of this new group of people who have been asked to work together for the duration of your project. If it's a longer duration, the tasks are a little simple because each one of them will have their own little space to get settled down and get comfortable in the project setting. In a smaller project, this can become an issue very fast. Focus on the storming phase. Here are individuals who have come in with their own little mindset. During the interview process, they may or may not have understood completely what their role will be. And each one have this understanding of trying to become a leader, or trying to coach others, or trying to mentor others rather than being mentored or coached themselves. And if you have acquired a lot of resources who are soul flyers, or who want to use this just as a stepping stone to achieving much bigger targets than what you can actually give them within your project, then the storming phase can get extended. Within the stage 2, the storming phase, the word storming would mean these different individuals creating waves and creating air around your project. Slowly and gradually, if the roles and responsibilities are shared with them accurately, they will start settling down. And the settling down phase of your project would be called the norming phase, becoming normalized, settle down, understanding what I need to achieve and get busy in achieving those targets. And hopefully those targets are the targets that you have set for them for your particular project in a project manager's capacity. Now, very few projects actually go from being in the norming phase to the performing phase, where they are going to not only meet the needs of the customer, but exceed customer's expectation and exceed the project manager's expectation. They are motivated individuals who want to do that a little bit more to achieve their target, do a little bit more to hasten up their activities. If the report is due tomorrow, they would want to deliver it today to fasten the pace of the project. Very few projects and very few teams go from 3 to 4. And if you have achieved that high-performing team, then you are considered one of the very lucky ones, or the very lucky few that have created high-performing team, because in a high-performing team, your role as a project manager is a very comfortable role. You have a self-driven team who understands the priorities, who understand the goals and objectives of your project, and continue to do that. Very little motivation is needed to be pumped in by your role as a project manager. They are actually motivated to achieve not just what is expected of them, but to achieve much more. Managing a high-performing team has its own comfort levels, but could also become a little troublesome sometimes. And the troublesome activities, when I say want to achieve more and more and more, each one of them needs to be aggressive enough and competitive enough. If you have situations where several individuals are very competitive and very aggressive, several are not, then driving each one of them can actually create some trouble in your project also. Last but not the least would be the adjourning phase. As like the word suggests, adjourning would be the closure activities. With that, let's move on. This little cartoon, the first one, the below, let's start with the below picture. Under the forming and the storming, each one is incapable of understanding what the role and responsibility is. So there's a little rush that is going on. I don't know whether I need to take my row, and is it 1 first or 2 first, or do I need to settle down? And then the norming and the performing. Performing team obviously are winners who will have their act so good that they will be going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right? This is the difference of forming storming and the norming performing. And this cartoon really depicts it all, because every project that you will be dealing with will have the stages of team development. You cannot expect your team to come in and be in a norming phase. The teams usually always have the forming, the storming, and the norming. Sometimes teams move from norming to adjourning. If you're lucky enough, you will have the norming to the performing and to the adjourning. And if you're not that lucky, and unfortunately so, your team could be in a forming to a storming and storming to the adjourning mode. You were unable to achieve the norming phase of the project, and the conflicts were just too much to handle with. And again, it will lead on to being one of those bullets that I talked about in the troubled or the failed project situation. That means at this point in time, your human resource conflicts will lead you and your project to become either a troubled, or eventually, if you cannot control those storming issues or those conflicts within your project human resources, then you end up being a failed project. The stages of team development. Under the stages of team development, the first stage is the forming stage. We talked a lot in detail about the different stages, how we bring in the team, the uncertainties that goes along with it, and then moving on, finally settling down and feeling good about what the team objectives are, finally getting to hopefully to the performing stage, and then subsequently the adjourning stage. The first stage would be your forming stage, the initial stage of team development. So let's look at some of the issues, and then we'll drill into the PM's roles and responsibility and how can you actually help in creating that. Most of these information that has been collected has been experienced, shared, and worked upon after lots of consultation, lots of questionnaires, lots of experience that have gone in and have been put together for assisting and easing the role of project manager in these situations. So we are sharing this strictly for educational purposes. Initially, all this information was done by IBM, and subsequently a little bit of updating and then sharing it with you for MSPM coursework. So forming will be your initial stage of team development. Issues: attempting to define their role in the project environment. So you've brought in a group of people who have come in because of their expertise or certain skills. They've been acquired and now they're part of your project environment. What are they uncertain about? They're uncertain about goals, peers, and leadership. So what would be the PM's roles and responsibility? PM role and responsibility. First thing that a project manager needs to do is to ensure that all the deliverables are clearly defined. And along with that, performance expectation is also provided to different individuals who are coming in to make sure that they feel comfortable with what they are ready or what they're about to deliver, that will make them good and productive team members. Conduct one-on-one to know the team member. An important activity that needs to take place is an individual one-on-one meeting. with each one of the team members. This will give not only you that opportunity to understand and describe what you are expecting from the team member, but also gives an opportunity to the team member to describe what he or she is expecting and where he or she wants to be after the end of the project. So the visions and missions not only of the project on your side, but also the visions and missions of that individual who is ready to become a contributing and a participating team member. Define how project success relates to their own success. An important key in there is to understand and define that the success of the project is directly related to the success of that individual. Now, making sure that all the right opportunities are provided to that individual to become a successful team member after he or she leaves the project. Establish your role as a coach and a leader. This is your opportunity to ensure that the person understands that the coach and the leadership responsibility lies on your shoulders. This would also be a time to initiate team building activities. Listen to the ideas that they are bringing in, not just an individual, but the whole entire team. They have ideas to make your project successful, and you need to give them an opportunity to explain to them, and you need to give yourself an opportunity and time to understand, digest that information and implement some of those techniques. Create a code of conduct for the team members. A well-written code of conducts always come in handy. If you are very particular about punctuality, then you need to make sure that they understand that. Working time, there's always a time in between, which you have to make sure that even in a flexible work environment, every team member needs to be available between the hours of 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., for example. So people who have the desire to come in a little bit early, they could come in at between 8:30 to 10, and then they can do their 8 hours and leave. But between the hours, for example, the hours of 10 to 4 or 4:30, you need to make sure that everybody is available, and that is just an operational routine environment in your particular project. Then that needs to go into the code of conduct. How employees need to dress up. If this is a situation where the customer frequently visits your project environment or project situation, physical location, then you need to make sure that people are appropriately dressed, whatever that the definition of appropriately dressed is in your case, in your project case. And several other situations. If it's important enough for you and your project team organization, make sure it goes into the code of conduct. What kind of language? What kind of demeanor? What kind of attitude? All those things, if they are important enough, needs to go into writing in a document that is shared once the employee starts working for your project. What is highlighted and bolded is invest in a well-planned kickoff meeting. A kickoff meeting is that initial meeting that you have half hour or 5 minutes to establish your role as a project manager, as somebody who knows what is needed from those individuals, and establishing your role as the leader, as the person that will be corresponding with the customer. You know what is going on, and project priorities are clearly defined. This kickoff meeting is again one of the make or break situations for a project manager, and to establish herself or himself in the project environment as that leader or the coach. The next stage of team development. So they've come in, moved into your project. You've heard their visions and missions, you've shared with them. However, there is still that probability or the possibility of them not knowing what is going on. So they are trying to establish, each individual in your project is trying to establish their position within the project also. Some of them may come in with the desire to be in the role that you already have as a project manager. Not a very common or not a very uncommon situation. So what would be the issues? Compete for desired tasks and responsibilities. They within themselves will start competing for desired tasks and responsibilities. You may have a lot of leaders in there. And then what would they start trying to do? If this is where they want to be in the next project, they will try to use this as a formation ground, and they will like to establish themselves as informal leaders. They may not have that name tag or that designation for a project manager, but they would again try to use this opportunity to become an informal leader. So what would be your role as a project manager within this phase, or to soften this phase, make it easy for the team members to transition to the norming phase? Again, establish yourself as the leader and the project champion. You need to make sure people understand that you have that responsibility of motivation and conflict resolution. You have that responsibility. You have the responsibility of taking the status report and building that communication with the customer. You have the responsibility of knowing what is going on within the project, and norms of communication should be established there. Your responsibility as a project manager is to approach and resolve the conflicts. Keep conflicts from becoming personal. Worst kind of conflicts are personnel conflicts, where people start thinking that I am not getting along with the other team members because of my personality. They don't like me because of a certain trait that I have. Project conflicts are different. Personality conflicts are different. Avoid having the project personnel think that everything is personal. We are all driving towards approaching and completing the project goals, and that is your main objective, and you have to understand and you have to clarify this to each of the team members, that meeting your project goals and objective is the only priority for them, along with you as a project manager. Try building a team. Ensure participation from every team member. And one thing that we need to understand and realize as a project manager is to expect storming. There will be no team that will come in, get acquired, get into a forming stage and move into a norming stage. There is always an intermediate step between the forming and the norming. Expect that there will be storming, expect that there will be conflicts. Moving on to the next stage is the norming. So you've gone through the forming, the storming, roles and responsibilities have been settled, people understand what they need to do, their expectations are built up, and they start settling down into their assigned roles and responsibilities. Issues that may arise during this particular stage. If all the conflicts haven't been resolved in the storming phase, you will start seeing that the teams are going to subdivide themselves into little groups. Settling down into groups and developing social relationships is fine, as long as it doesn't become opposing groups. So what would be your responsibility as a project manager in this situation or to ease this situation? No matter how you do it, but you have to kind of do this, is to encourage your team members to exchange ideas between themselves. Establish peer-to-peer training and development of new skills. Try pairing people up. Ease the situation where social friendships are developed. They work well together. Somehow they are working as a team, not subdividing themselves into different groups. Conduct regular team meeting and status report. When teams get together on a weekly basis and share ideas and share statuses, that is the beginning of creating an environment which is a team environment. Reward good behavior and team participation. When you see people pitching in and trying to do things as a team, reward them. And reward could be different things. It could be monetary and non-monetary also. One thing that needs to be done immediately in a norming stage is correct issues immediately. If you see an issue, correct it. And what is underlined as one of the more important activities is allow individuals to grow skills and responsibility whenever they're ready. Don't develop a situation where people are feeling that there's monotonous work, it's boring, I can do better than that. When you see those situations of somebody doing well, give him or her that opportunity of doing something harder. That would actually motivate them. You as a project manager, you need to keep your eyes and ears open to ease that situation whenever it happens. So, this would be the norming stage, and now we're moving into a stage which is hard to achieve and sometimes impossible to achieve in most project environments. Performing team is providing and producing desirable results. Even in a high-performing team or even in a performing team, when things seem to be going well, everybody's understanding what they need to do, they're actually doing what it takes to get your project on time and deliver it according to the goals that have been set aside. What would be the issues? Beware of underlying issues. Again, keep your ears and your eyes open. Ensure that there's continuous team skills development. Again, what I just said in the previous slide is make sure that that monotonous, I am better than the work I'm doing kind of a mindset does not exist. Your role and responsibility in this situation are very clear and should be very clear in your head. If you are one of the lucky few project managers whose team have moved into a performing stage where they actually know what they're doing, they'll get the work done with minimum guidance and minimum support, then your responsibility needs to be provide timely critique and positive feedback. So, if somebody is doing well, you need to make sure that a situation exists where you help them out and provide a positive feedback. You need to ensure that a regular project team meeting is happening and the status reports are being generated. Consistently demand high quality work products. Don't let people go into a situation where they become too comfortable and too relaxed. Those two words are a no-no in a project environment. And what is highlighted and underlined is be very clear and consistent in desired performance. You as project manager has also worked hard to bring your team to the performing stage And once you have established a team as a performing team, then make sure that they continue to work at the same pace and to achieve the same goals continuously and continually. Last but not the least will be your adjourning phase, the final stage with team disbanding. Understand that the ideal route will be the forming, the storming, the norming, the performing, and the adjourning. But there are situations where teams go from forming to storming and then the adjourning, failed or troubled projects. Then most often you have the forming, the storming, the norming, and the adjourning. So adjourning would be the last situation or the last stage, thus the final stage with team disbanding. And what would be your issues? Where you're unsure about future assignment, right? You're in the adjourning phase. You don't know where you're going. You're actually going out and looking for different projects. You're working and talking to different people to ensure that you have a project lined up. The headaches and the heartaches of being in a projectized organization. At this point in time, the team feels anxiety of separation. Whether if it's a performing team, those anxieties may be really big. If it was a storming, obviously anxiety will be less. You'll be actually happy to move out. Whatever it is, there is some comfort level that the team members have established of being in a project with certain team members. And once you're ready to actually move on into a new territory, you have that anxiety of how will it be, what will it be, how will I operate, what are the code of conducts. I'm so used to getting my weekends off. What if they ask me and they expect me to work on Saturdays? I am so used to flexible work hours, and so on and so forth, multiple reasons. So what would be your role and responsibility as a project manager to ease some of those concerns? Number one, motivate them to continue to give you high quality work products till the end of the project. Remember, your project hasn't ended. So nobody should be allowed to take it easy, because in the work breakdown structure, there were certain tasks that were provided as closure activities. And your expectation of your team members to continue to provide high quality work also exists in that little closure phase activities. An important thing that we always sometimes forget in a hurry is to make sure that we are providing thank yous and recognition to each member. Constructive feedback, things that went well, things that did not go very well, all of it should be recognized and put together in whatever format is applicable. Make sure that your role as a project manager also wants you to provide feedback to their line managers and the functional managers. If 95% organizations are in a matrix or a functional organization, that means the teams or the members will be going back to their original departments. In that situation, you have to make sure that a well-written, documented feedback is going back to the managers, to the functional managers, or in the PM lingo, the line managers. What else can you do? If you have the title manager and you have established yourself as a coach and a leader, you should also assist in finding next assignments for them. Yes, you yourself may be looking for assignments for yourself, but it's an opportunity to help direct them or use your own network skills to find good and better opportunities for them. Because you know their skills, you know the areas for improvement, you have kind of gotten a feel of what their vision and mission is over the period of your project. So help them achieve those goals and objectives. It's a small world. Yes, they are moving on to new assignments, but believe me, they may come back to you and work for you later on in life. Provide constructive critique and coach individuals positively. Constructive critique. If you see area of improvement, help them understand how to recover from that situation. Closed project and share the results with the team. Often forgotten area is the results of closure are never shared with the team. Have a team closure meeting. Take them out for a lunch, share with them how does the customer react, come up with little jokes, little anecdotes of how the customer reacted to this. Share with them some stories or what happened in a sponsor meeting. Tell them the customer was concerned about this area. Hopefully next time we will work on this area more. We will focus our attention on this area more. Again, what is highlighted and underlined is invest in a lessons learned meeting. We talked a lot about lessons learned meeting in the previous presentations. Make sure that time is allocated. Make sure it's a good, well-facilitated, well-executed lessons learned meeting where everybody has an open opportunity to talk about things that went well or things that did not go well. So from development, we are moving into how to manage a project team. Tracking your team performance, motivating your team members, providing timely feedback, resolving issues and conflicts, and coordinating changes to help enhance your project performance. So you have a team, you've acquired it, you've helped them develop, you helped them manage, and now what are you doing? Within the execution phase, you are there and you're closely monitoring and managing your project team. You are looking at what was planned for them versus what is their actual output. So planned versus the actual output. You also have this responsibility of motivating them to continue to give not just what is considered their responsibility, but to motivate them to pitch in and give in much more than what is just considered desirable result. So from moving from meeting to exceeding customers' requirement. You also have to make sure that you're providing timely feedback. If a report was submitted on time, make sure you walk up to the person's desk and appreciate that. A pat on the back, a good handshake, a thank you is worth so much more when it is done on a timely basis. If you do this 6 months down the road, then the value of that thank you comes down significantly. You also need to timely resolve issues and conflicts. Don't sit on things. Raat gayi, baat gayi, miti pao, things like this don't work in a real project environment. Don't procrastinate. And what do you need to do? You also have the responsibility as a project manager to coordinate changes to help enhance project performance. And then on the bottom of the slide, you would say, see, critique in private. What do we do as project managers? We're in a team meeting, and the same way we deal with our own children at home, We deal with our project team members also. Critique in public. These are the reports that the customers hated it. I was under so much trouble and so much stress because of some work that you did, name a person. In a social norm and in a project environment, these are big no-nos. Critique in private, if you have an issue, have a one-on-one meeting, share that with them. It's again a no-no to hide these things. If there's an issue, do it in private. But appreciation should be in public. When somebody has done good work, it's worth more when everybody shares and hears it. So, people feel good about when they're appreciated in public. Most of the time, what do we do as project managers? We critique in public, and we usually always appreciate in private. Again, things that we need to change in our own head, because these are established practices that have worked very well for different organizations and different good project managers. We talked about a high-performing team, and we also talked about not many teams become a high-performing team. In your reference material, I've also put in the wisdoms of, there's a book out there for a high-performing team. If you ever have the opportunity, read that book. It's a wonderful book that I would like all of you to read and get your hands on. So what are these characteristics of a high-performing team? First of all, these teams need to be innovative, high quality, almost always on budget, on time, always deliver the basic scope, the customer's expectation. They always meet the customer's expectation, if not exceeding it. They have a high response rate. It's a membership of self-development. If they need to work on something, they will not wait for others to provide them training opportunities. They will take that initiative, go out and work on it. The innovative behavior. So the innovative behavior in this situation will be coming from the team itself and the team members itself. The risk sharing. They're so aggressive in meeting the targets of the desired targets of the project that they sometimes are eager to take risks. And the team within itself shares those risks. They're committed, dedicated. There's effective communication going on. When they're in a team meeting, they usually raise their hands and share their concerns. Effective cross-functional interfaces and alliances. So within the functional organizations, they're working out and creating friendships, creating those social situations where they are effectively sharing information. They are also quality-oriented. I'll talk in a bit, I'm going to talk about minimal reliance on procedures, but let's move on to the other set. The high need for achievement. These are the individuals who need to be motivated on a regular basis because they have their missions and goals up front. They're not just coming in, doing their 9-to-5 jobs, making ends meet and then move on, go back home, relax, and then ready to come back tomorrow. These are individuals who are part of your team who have a high need for achievement. So there's a continuous and a continual need for motivating these individuals, making sure that their visions and missions are matching your own visions and missions. These are individuals who enjoy work, a high morale and a team spirit. They're change-oriented. They are self-directed. They are conflict managers amongst themselves. When there's a conflict, they try to resolve it. And then, what I said I will get back to is the minimal reliance on procedures. Minimal reliance on procedures and processes. They go out, they get the work done in the shortest possible period of time, getting help whenever they need, and they are the people who are called creative individuals. They think out of the box. Having said so many, giving you so many qualities of high-performing team, now we all realize why is it so difficult for teams to actually become high-performing team. That were the qualities of a high-performing team. If we change the tune and start focusing more on the project manager, project manager is that juggler again who's juggling with multiple eggs. What are those skill sets that make you an effective project manager? Communication, good communication skills. They need to have organizational skills. They need to have skills for building teams. They need to be leaders. They need to be coach. They need to be mentors. They need to have the skill of coping. How to cope with certain situations, because there will be situations where things are not going the way you've planned them to be. So how do you cope with those situations? It's always the project manager's responsibility to quickly move on, resolve conflicts. Good project managers. Things come in as issues, you resolve them. Don't let yourself procrastinate in any situation. And then the technological expertise. Different technologies, you need to be working along everybody else. Otherwise, in this environment, younger crowd, the less experience coming in, because they have that expertise, will quickly be taking over, and you will be, instead of trying to do bigger and better things of working with your human resources, you will be burdened under learning new technologies, learning to cope with new reports. So always stay up there, out and about. The many hats of a project manager. We will close out on this particular slide, because again, when we talk about this project manager standing there juggling with eggs, all these qualities that person has to do, issues, storming, norming, performing, helping, motivating, resolving conflicts. So what does a project manager do? What kind of skills does that person need to have? For a good project manager, you need to be a strategist. You need to understand what is up there and what is out there. That person is not just an executor of if I need to do this, I'm just going to get this. That person also have to have some visionary capabilities. The project manager needs to be a recruiter. That antenna goes up wherever you see a good person with good skills. You always have to have strong networking skills. If not in this project, in the next project, I'm going to bring on this person. That mindset of spotting good individuals, good skills, and keeping track of them, making sure that you have established a relationship of contacting and bringing on board that person whenever and wherever your project needs him or her. the designer, the negotiator, a very, very important skill. How do you negotiate? How do you build those social norms? How do you build that relationship between people? Then a decision making. Each and every day you are deciding, not just for yourself and your project, but deciding on behalf of others also. Integrator, project integration management, taking all those pearls all over the place and putting them together so it becomes a string pearl. Integrator, taking multiple processes out there. And one of the most important attributes of a good project manager is for her or him to be an integrator. How to take these different pieces and put them together. A good project manager is also an influencer. Based on the communication skills, based on the personal repute, based on the expertise that I have developed, I am going to influence not just my team, but my customers, my organization into thinking the right thing, and the right thing according to my standards and my judgment. Hopefully we are influencing the organization and the team and the customers in the right direction. But no matter what it is, one quality of a project manager is to be an influencer. Then a conflict manager. Day in, day out, conflicts are coming in. You're not only a motivator, but you're also a conflict manager. Mentor. Remember that example about holding a kid's hand and walking across the highway? Day in, day out, you will be holding somebody's hand and making them cross the highway. Whether it's personnel issue, or it is the technological issue, or it is issues resolving, coming up because of the customer. No matter what it is, you are responsible for mentoring your team members and people around you. Expediter, facilitator, move on, move about, get done, get moving. A coach, a counselor, and above all, a diplomat. Remember, within all these roles, your target is very clear. You are there to meet your project objectives. And the priorities of your project should be very clear in your head while you're wearing the so many different hats of a project manager. So, under the project human resource management, we talked about the whole process, the different processes of starting with a project human resource plan, and then acquiring, developing, and managing of the project team. We talked about the different stages of development. All teams have it, all individuals have it. Then we move on to some of the skills of a project manager. And then the high-performing team. What does it take to become a high-performing team? It's not just your responsibility as a project manager to motivate your team to become a high-performing team, but you also need to have resources who are ready to cross that highway and get onto the bandwagon of being a high performer. And then the different roles and responsibilities of a project manager. In any given day, you could be wearing multiple hats at multiple instances, or wearing multiple hats at one time, of being a coach and an integrator. While you're making decisions on behalf of your project, you're also being a counselor, making sure that your project team is reciprocal in what you are trying to achieve for them. In all these cases, one thing is very clear. Project human resource management is probably the hardest aspect because dealing with human resources is probably the hardest activity. The way you work with individuals outside of your project may be maybe 180 degrees different when you bring in the same individuals in a project environment and make them work for you or make them work together with other individuals. No matter what it is, project human resource management is definitely one of the hardest of the knowledge areas, and also you can reap the most benefit out of it if you've captured your team's attention. With this, the end of lecture number 15. I wish you best of luck, happy reading. Hopefully all these things are making sense and are getting clearer along the road while we're capturing different knowledge areas, different phases of project management. And Allah Hafiz, I will see you with the next lecture, and we'll continue to talk more about project management and the human resource management in the next presentation. This is Ghazala Amin. Good luck and Allah Hafiz.